A little while ago, I made a community post asking your guys' thoughts on what a potential season 2 of Murder Drones could look like. Now, despite a season 2 of Murder Drones being almost out of the question at this point, I decided to take a look at your guys' thoughts on this idea and deliver judgment or something. I was also able to wrangle in 2 of my fellow YouTubers and get their thoughts on what a potential season 2 could also look like. So if you're curious about what they think about this idea, then stick around for the end of the video. Also, quick disclaimer before I get started, these are just people's opinions on what a season 2 could look like. Please do not harass anyone in this video who is featured, they are just expressing their opinion. Prequel. Simple. I got a lot of comments suggesting ideas for a prequel for season 2, which I guess wouldn't really make sense because it's a season 2 and normally you would expect it to go forward and not backward in the timeline, but at this point I wouldn't really care. I think the only reason why this would be kind of a difficult idea to do is that we already know what's going to happen. We're shown and probably can infer that Copper 9 is the last exoplanet that really was around. Earth, along with the 2 other exoplanets that I can't be bothered to look up the names of, were all presumably destroyed as shown in episode 6. So you kind of run into like a Rogue One situation, if you know what that is, being everyone's basically doomed to die or have a really most likely not very good explanation on why they weren't in season 1. Not to say that a prequel is entirely a horrible idea. I think if we followed a character such as one of the disassembly drones, J, V, N, or any other of the letters or something, we can get more of an insight of what Sin did on Earth and the other exoplanets, along with more of an in-depth dive into how the disassembly drones worked, were created, and so on and so on. Ever since we saw a little bit of Dahl in the episode 8 credits, I've been toying with the idea of ghosts in the Murder Drones universe. So if I were to write a season 2, I'd make it sort of a paranormal investigation thing in the bunker. Maybe the solver is bringing people back from the dead, or something like that. This idea isn't exactly as far-fetched as you probably would think it is. Liam Vickers does have a history of doing a lot of paranormal things in all of his stories, so it wouldn't be completely out of the ordinary. However, we run into some problems with the solver's ability to bring people back from the dead. I think, or at least I would find it kind of difficult to try to write that in or shoehorn it in a season 2. If it was introduced in like the middle of season 1, I guess that would make a little bit more sense, but it would be kind of a stretch to introduce a completely new ability to the solver that could have been used previously in the series but just wasn't. Definitely a prequel, either taking back okay, I'm not reading all of that. The basic gist is basically getting a better episode 5 but as a whole season. This is something I think is the best case scenario for a prequel, just getting a more in-depth version of what episode 5 could have been. And this could also build off the idea I proposed for a prequel, just adding on the fact that we get a little bit more in the beginning in Elliot Manor, instead of afterward when Sin takes over Earth and whatever. With episode 5 being one of Murder Drones' biggest fumbles, I think this would be a great way to kind of reconcile with the fans about that whole missed bag, and it would be really cool if we actually were to get to see this. Oh wait, someone's already making that. Either a prequel or the solver turns out to have backup hosts so it's still alive. The cast has to figure out a different way to destroy it. Maybe Sin tries to take over Uzi, a new type of dangerous drone is made by the solver, new characters, more backstory, and more character development and character interactions between characters that we can get to see in the first season. Okay, a huge problem I have with potential season 2 ideas for Murder Drones is just the solver having backup hosts. Like, you're telling me that huge epic fight in episode 8 and practically the entire first season of Murder Drones was basically for nothing because the solver just has more hosts. Like, sure, I guess this would explain why the solver was so lenient about sending their one and only host, quote unquote, to Copper 9 to deal with things, but the idea that everything that we went through in the first season was basically for nothing kinda outweighs the filling of that plot hole. I think if there is some sort of reveal that Sin had some sort of backup plan for just in case that they failed, would be a better reveal, like maybe more disassembly drones or a new type of drone that would get introduced. This isn't exactly my first pick when it comes to creating a season 2, but I'm just trying to make the best of what I'm given here. Either way, I think this idea is still on the right track, just I feel like the idea of just having backup hosts feels a little bit off and not exact fair, especially, you know, not retconning, but kind of making the entirety of season 1 useless. People seem to think that season 2 has to have Sin as the main antagonist. In my version, a new character is the antagonist who goes after Uzi for revenge after learning she killed Rebecca. This character is very strong, intelligent, and independent, but is morally ambiguous as he tries to help V and J become friends again, and in my version is the one who saved V from the Sentinel attack in episode 6. My take would serve to develop Uzi's character more and have her actually be given consequences for her actions. This one kinda throws me for a loop a little bit, because the beginning kinda had me questioning who this character was and whether they were your self-insert OC. I mean, come on, this character is very strong, intelligent, and independent. Don't get me wrong, writing your own OCs in your own season 2 is fine. I mean, it's your own season 2. But, and just to give you a little bit of writing advice, don't just say that they're strong, intelligent, and independent. You should probably show that. Flashbacks or some sort of backstory explanation. It seems that there are a lot of little bits that are kind of shoved into this comment kind of randomly, like tries to help V and J become friends again and is the one who saved V in episode 6 from the Sentinels. Not only does this kind of have some problems with continuity, since we just haven't been introduced to this character at all in season 1, it also raises a question of what kind of motivation makes you go out of your way to help a murder drone become friends with another murder drone and then also go into a lab that can most definitely get you killed to save one of these murder drones who has committed mass genocide to your people. To give them a little bit of credit though, I do like the idea of season 2 fully exploring the crimes Uzi did in episode 4 especially, you know, killing a bunch of people. Her actually given consequences to her actions I feel like isn't exactly explored a lot in the actual season 1, so it would be really nice if we saw more of that in season 2. In my perfect timeline, Murder Drones remains a 2-season long project, and using episode 3 as a jumping off point, we can create a pseudo-second pilot of the series since we follow a serial story from the point onwards, and that's where it ends. Oh wait, no, there's more. Well, okay, surely it can't be that much more, right? Okay, I'm sorry, but I am definitely ain't reading all that. You can if you want to, I'll put it up on screen right now, but from what I can tell, this is basically just an alternate timeline. I think it also talks a little bit about how it would fix a lot of things wrong with the show, which would also be great. Now, reprising the series and making it relatively better than it was before is kind of what I'm hoping to see in the graphic novel that's coming out in 2026, but isn't exactly something I would want to see in a season 2. I mean, I'd basically just be rewatching the same show. Some solver drones come to Copper 9 and try to kill Uzi because they think killing Uzi equals killing the absolute solver. Also, I think we should see more villains, more lore about JC Jensen, and Eldritch abominations. When you say solver drones, I'm going to assume you meant like drones with the absolute solver, like abilities with like Doll and Uzi, and not disassembly drones, which if you did mean that, that wouldn't really make sense because the only time we saw experiments done on drones with the absolute solver was on Copper 9. So I'm going to just assume that you said disassembly drones, which I guess would kind of make sense. I mean, we kind of get the idea from V and J that a lot of drones probably want to get rid of the absolute solver, but we also know that not every drone controlled by Sin retains their memory. I think this idea does have a lot of promise to it, but it just needs to be thought out a little bit more. Now it's time to review the thoughts of my fellow YouTubers, starting with the Dire Duck. Take it away.
Hello everybody, I am the Dire Duck. AY Cosmic has invited me here to give my opinion on what a hypothetical season 2 would look like, or at the very least how I would personally write it. Now, I could go on for hours about this subject, but I have a feeling Cosmic would like to keep this video under the hour mark, so I will try and give a brief summary. So, in short, I think there are two main ways this can go down. The first one would be to write a season 2 that would be based around Doll. It is highly likely that Doll is still kicking around inside Uzi and Sin after the events of the finale, so we could have her re-emerge. We know that Sin is unable to directly threaten Uzi's control over her body, however we don't know this for Doll. Therefore, we'll have Doll spend the season trying to slowly take over Uzi, forming a Jekyll and Hyde type situation, with the cast finding dead drones from time to time around the colony. Initially suspecting Jay, they would hunt her down, but after she is dealt with, the murders would keep happening. This would result in the cast then suspecting Sin, before finally Doll is able to take control of Uzi and reveal herself. This works because it prevents Uzi from easily defeating the villain herself, as in some ways she is the villain of this season. Not to mention that the rest of the cast will be reluctant to kill Uzi, hampering their options in how to deal with the situation. This would also place Uzi more in a secondary role during the season, allowing for the rest of the long sideline cast to finally get a chance to shine, as the season will revolve more around their reaction to this dilemma. The season will lead up to another episode 7 style battle with possessed Uzi and the rest of the cast. There are definitely issues with this direction though. For example, in a lot of ways it is retreading the events of season 1. Therefore, another more plausible direction that we can take season 2 would be the awaited return of one of the show's most famous elements, even though it mattered little in the end. That being the return of JC Jensen and the strike back of humanity. At the beginning of the actual show, Uzi referenced that humanity was probably the one to send down the drone to wipe out the rogue sentient AI. Obviously, we know that isn't what actually happened, but now we can make that a reality. Humanity would come to Copper 9 in an attempt to wipe out all sentient drones on the planet for much the same reasons Sim wanted to prevent the emergence of other Solver drones. They would of course know about the experiments that were being conducted on the drones like Yeva and Nori, so want to ensure they are terminated. Humanity would certainly have a bone to pick with Sin as well, seeing her elimination as the greatest priority, as, you know, she sort of wiped out Earth and, you know, billions of people. They definitely would hold a grudge. Therefore, when they discover Sin taking up residence in the tail of a mutated Solver drone in the form of Uzi, peace would never be an option. As frankly, why would humanity believe that Uzi has Sin under control? Hell, Uzi doesn't even know that for sure. And even if she did, would humanity really be okay with a powerful Solver being in the form of an angsty, emotionally unstable teen that has expressed her want to destroy humanity on several occasions? I think not. So this season will focus on the remnants of humanity trying to wipe out our main cast, employing all manner of technologies to do so, from computer viruses to sentinels to straight up firepower, culminating in a world-ending weapon being brought out in a final attempt to defeat our cast. With this plot structure, you could pursue a Monster of the Week style format that Liam initially wanted to do with MD, with each episode having a new threat that the cast would need to deal with. You could also have Sin try to mess with things their own special way for fun, and to make Uzi doubt herself in a bid to escape her imprisonment. Alongside this, we could also potentially have Jay try to assist JC Jensen in a bid to save her own skin and to serve the company like she always claimed to want, with it probably not ending very well for her. This story would also create an interesting dichotomy, as we see the desperate and traumatized humans try their best to destroy the thing that killed so many of them, allowing the development of some very interesting human characters. You could also recreate the moral dilemma that the viewers went through in episodes 6 and 7 before the Tessa twist. We know our main cast fairly well by this point, so we would naturally be attached to them. However, we would also be attached to our fellow humans and could very easily see the situation from their perspective, making an interesting no true villain type situation, with both parties having valid reason for what they are doing. While there are also some issues with this direction, I think for a season 2 of Murder Drones, you either have to scale up the stakes with the return of humanity, or shrink them down to tell a much more personal story, like the doll idea. At the end of the day though, I think it comes down to personal preference. But yeah, thank you AY Cosmic for indulging in my crazed ramblings. I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Dyer. Now, this idea, or ideas, were definitely very good and have a lot of potential, however, do have a little bit of a problem. Like Dyer did point out in his first idea, it does kind of retrace the entirety of Season 1 a little bit. However, I do also like the idea of bringing Doll in more as a major role in the Season 2, since, you know, she wasn't exactly used a lot in Season 1. Now, his second idea is where I run into a little bit more of a bigger problem. With this kind of Monster of the Week-esque episode style, it's going to be hard to find where to start off from. After all, we are just coming off from a huge fight in episode 8 of season 1, so the stakes are already high, so either you have to find something that's higher than episode 8, or start off lower and then gradually build up more, which could result in some people getting a little bit bored since we've already seen a huge fight between the absolute solver and all of our favorite protagonists. Now, there are plenty of ways to fix this idea of writing after a huge finale. TV shows and series in general do this all the time. However, it's just things you have to think about before just immediately jumping into this concept, which, to be fair, is a great concept. Now it's time for the other YouTuber I was able to drag into this video. The person probably at the top of this description because I get more clicks that way. The guy with almost 70,000 subscribers, I think. And the person you've probably seen at some point in your homepage. I'm of course referring to Yagster.
How I would write MD Season 2 is very simple. I'd revive Braden and make him the main antagonist. The reason as to why it'd be Braden is because he's objectively the best character. Plus, having a drone who Uzi's wronged in the past coming back to haunt her in the present is just too cool of a premise to pass up. Is what I would say if I was partially joking, but I'm not. In all seriousness, I imagine a potential Season 2 of MD having a very similar premise to another MD fan project, End of the Line. Having Uzi and the King face an internal threat makes the most sense direction-wise, seeing as how I don't really think you can top the Solver in terms of pure external stakes. If not this, then I would imagine focusing on a different exoplanet with an entirely different cast would also be a pretty cool direction to take, cause I don't think Copper 9 has too much left to give in my opinion. Following a different cast on a different exoplanet would also inherently give the viewers a different experience, and let's be real, I think the MD universe is pretty due for that. And that's about everything I have to say, so thank you for having me on, Cosmic. Also, could someone please make my Braden pitch become a reality? Please and thank you.
This idea isn't exactly too shabby. I do like the idea of focusing on something new instead of the main cast, and although unspecified whether it's a prequel or not, I think there is some way that this could be done. Not the Braden stuff. I don't know about that. If you enjoyed this video, then consider leaving a like, and if you want me to share my own opinion on what I think a season 2 of Murder Drones could be like, leave a comment down below. Apologies for such a slow upload schedule. I've been trying to focus on quality instead of quantity, and school's been kind of really annoying. And that's about it for this video, and I'll see you next time.